The floor beneath. Marcus's feet was worn smooth from 17 years of pushing a mop across it, but his hands still trembled as he gripped the handle. Every morning at 4 a.m., before the sun cracked open the sky, he would arrive at Morrison, Tech with nothing but his work uniform and a heart so heavy it felt like it might drag him through the earth itself. His daughter Zoe was 9 years old now, 9 years of single parenting, of choosing between new shoes and textbooks, of working overtime shifts so she could have lunch money instead of just the free lunch he couldn't bear to watch her claim in front of her classmates. There were nights when Marcus would lie in their apartment listening to the radiator, clank and sputter, wondering if he'd failed her somehow, if his love would ever be enough to patch the broken parts of her world that only a complete family could fix. But it was on one of those ordinary Tuesday mornings, while Marcus was cleaning the executive conference room on the 42nd floor, that something extraordinary shifted inside him. He wasn't supposed to be there during the meeting. The cleaning schedule clearly indicated 5 a.m., when the building was silent and empty. But the conference had run long the night before, and Marcus had slipped in quietly to collect the trash and straighten the chairs, trying to be invisible the way he'd perfected over nearly 2 decades of watching the world hurry past him. He was reaching for an abandoned coffee cup when he heard voices, anger laced through every word. Through the partially open door, he could see CEO Richard Chen sitting at the head of a polished mahogany table, flanked by executives in suits that cost more than Marcus made in a month. "We've lost 3 major contracts this quarter," Richard was saying, his voice sharp with frustration. "Our competitor is eating our lunch because they understand something we don't. They're connected to their customers. We're treating them like transactions, like they're just numbers on a spreadsheet. We're efficient, sure, but we're not building anything real. We're not creating loyalty. We're just extracting value." One of the executives offered solutions: data analytics, targeted marketing campaigns, loyalty programs designed by consultants. Richard listened, nodded, but there was something dead in his eyes. He stood and walked to the window, his shoulders sagging under the weight of 1,000 decisions that hadn't led him anywhere meaningful. That's when Marcus did something that would have been impossible to explain if anyone had asked him to justify it. He wasn't conscious of moving. His body seemed to make the decision his mind hadn't yet caught up to. He stepped into the conference room. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that has weight, that presses against your eardrums and makes you question every choice that led you there. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and his voice sounded smaller than he felt. "I shouldn't interrupt. I know I'm just the janitor, but I heard what you said and I think maybe I can help." Richard turned from the window. The executives exchanged glances that ranged from confusion to barely concealed contempt. One of them actually smirked. "You have something to tell us about business strategy?" Another executive's tone was designed to humiliate, and it worked. Marcus felt heat flood his face. But then he looked at Richard's eyes and saw something different there. Not mockery, but curiosity, desperation even. "Go ahead," Richard said quietly. Marcus set his mop aside, and suddenly his hands had nowhere to go. He crossed his arms, uncrossed them, finally let them hang at his sides. "My daughter Zoe, she's 9. Last year, she wanted to quit piano. Said she was bad at it, that there was no point. And I almost let her, you know. I told myself I was being practical. That we didn't have money to waste on something she wasn't passionate about." An executive actually groaned. Richard held up a hand. "But then I remembered something my own father told me," Marcus continued. "He said the point isn't to be the best. The point is to show up for someone and let them know they matter enough for you to show up." So I asked Zoe if she wanted to keep going. Not because she'd be great, but because I'd be in the audience every single time, no matter what. She kept going. And you know what? She's still not the most talented musician, but she stopped seeing her piano teacher as someone judging her. She started seeing her as someone who believed in her. The room was still quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. "Your customers aren't leaving you because your products aren't good," Marcus said, his voice steadier now. "They're leaving because they don't feel like you believe in them. They feel like just another transaction, like you're there to take from them, not to show up for them. But if you showed up, if you actually invested in understanding their lives, their struggles, Their dreams, if you made them, feel like they mattered to you beyond what they could spend. That's something people don't forget. That's something they tell their families about. That's loyalty you can't buy, no matter how much you spend on consultants or algorithms. He could see it happening on Richard's face, the moment the words actually landed. When the desperate CEO became a person capable of understanding something beyond quarterly earnings. Every morning, Marcus added quietly, I come here at 4 in the morning and I clean these floors. And I take home barely enough to keep my daughter safe and fed. I do it because it's honest work and it pays for her life. I do it without complaint because what other choice do I have? But you know what makes me come back, even when I'm exhausted? It's because 2 weeks ago, one of your young employees, I think his name is David, he stayed late and helped my daughter with her homework in the lobby while I finished my shift. He didn't have to do that. He barely knew me. But he saw a kid who mattered, and he showed up. And that moment, that tiny moment of human kindness, it's made me feel like maybe I'm not failing as a father, like maybe this company cares about people, not just profit. Richard's eyes were glistening now, and Marcus realized with shock that the powerful CEO looked just like Marcus felt most days, like someone carrying too much weight alone. You're right, Richard said, and his voice cracked slightly. Somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started this company. It was never about the money. It was about building something that helped people live better lives. When did I lose that? You haven't, Marcus said. You're just remembering it now. The executives left that conference room an hour later, and by that afternoon, Richard had initiated a company-wide initiative called Show Up, requiring every executive to spend 1 day a month in direct contact with customers, not as a sales strategy, but as a genuine conversation about their lives and their needs. It started with questions like, what do you really need? And how can we be better for you? Rather than, what will you buy? Within 6 months, Morrison Tech's customer retention had climbed higher than it had been in 5 years. More importantly, Richard had started a scholarship fund in his mother's name. And the first scholarship went to a single parent working 2 jobs to put their child through college. But the most beautiful part of the story happened 3 months later, when Richard approached Marcus as he was closing up for the evening. The CEO was alone, vulnerable without his armor of authority. I owe you everything, Richard said. Marcus shook his head. You don't owe me anything. You just remembered something you already knew. No, Richard said. I learned something real from you, and I want Zoe to know that her father's wisdom changed the course of this entire company. A week later, Zoe received an acceptance letter to an elite music academy with a full scholarship. The letter included a personal note from Richard, telling her about her father's courage, about kindness changing the world, about showing up for people mattering more than anything else. Marcus stood in their small apartment holding that letter, and for the first time in 17 years, the weight lifting from his shoulders felt like grace.